Hi, welcome to Car Fanatic with Mr. V8. Please subscribe. You're looking at ISUZU's top-selling vehicle in Australia, and there's a good reason it holds that distinction. For one, the ISUZU D-MAX is built on a tried and tested formula. Now in its third generation, it received an update earlier in 2024 that brought refinements to things like its front fascia, bonnet, and headlights. On the inside, it received a tweaked instrument cluster and new touchscreen infotainment system with wireless Android Auto. Additionally, off-road capability has been improved with the addition of a rough terrain mode on 4x4 models, which works alongside the rear differential lock for maximum traction. There were also some safety updates that improved the function of systems that were already present. In 2023, the D-MAX was the third best-selling 4x4 UDA in the country, behind only the Ford Ranger and Toyota Hilux. It's quite sharply priced against at least one of those two, and is among the more affordable UDA lineups available here right now. To top it all off, ISUZU claims to have fixed the bump steer issue from previous models that led to premature and uneven tire wear. On test here is the 2024 ISUZU D-MAX LSE Plus, which offers some extra interior conveniences over the rest of the range and the beefier of the two powertrains on offer. It's ranked one rung down from the peak of the D-MAX pecking order, and comes in for just over $65,000 before on-road costs. That's less than most of its rivals, including the equivalent Ranger Wildtrak bi-turbo. What's under the bonnet? The ISUZU D-MAX is offered with a choice of two 4-cylinder turbo diesel engines, a 1.9-liter with 110 kilowatts of power and 350 Nm of torque, and a 3.0-liter with 140 kilowatts and 450 Nm. Our tester was fitted with the latter. How does the ISUZU D-MAX drive? Given what's offered in some of its competition, the D-MAX drives surprisingly well. Dual cab utes have been known to skittishly bang and clatter over bumps when there's nothing loaded, but ISUZU has managed to refine the ride to a point where there's really nothing that will have you falling out of your seat. Of course, the average road in regional Victoria won't be the most comfortable of drives in the D-MAX, but realistically there's only a handful of rivals that do it better. As with the interior presenting as a rugged SUV, the driving experience is pleasantly consistent with that notion. This grade of D-MAX still has a leaf spring setup in the rear, but they're the softer and more compliant version of what ISUZU offers towards the cheaper end of the range for models aimed at heavier hauling. At highway speeds, the ride is smooth, made better by those comfortable and supportive front seats. Even road and wind noise isn't bad, which is encouraging given the car's design and its large door mirrors. One of the only gripes I had was a metallic rattle / knocking on the A-pillar, which I suspect was caused by the LSU Plus S snorkel that is fitted as standard. What was weird was its inconsistency, as it was completely silent some days but obnoxiously present on others, while sometimes also making noise at low speed but not high speed, and vice versa. Additionally, there was sometimes a creak from the front suspension when setting off in the morning, and the interior plastics would occasionally rattle depending on what the diesel engine was doing. These were all small inconveniences though, and they don't undermine what is actually quite an enjoyable car to drive. It's a good job our tester was fitted with ISUZU's 3.0-liter turbo diesel, as that engine gives just enough punch to not leave you wanting more while still remaining perfectly drivable. Could it do with a touch more power and torque? Maybe, but when the choice is between a 1.9-liter turbo diesel or the larger motor in our tester, there's really no question as to which I'd prefer. Put your foot into it and the D-MAX gets going with no issues, but the engine is a little rough and noisy as it climbs through the rev range. It wasn't a problem given that characteristic isn't uncommon for diesels, and at cruising speeds you'd be hard-pressed to pick out anything mechanical worth making a fuss over. As a bonus, the steering is especially light, particularly at low speeds. That makes it incredibly maneuverable in car parks, and easy to drive on the open road when combined with the stable ride ISUZU has managed to dial in with this latest D-MAX. None of the D-MAX's 4x4 UDA variants are offered with a manual transmission, and a 6-speed automatic is standard instead. Fortunately, it's quite a good unit. It shifts when it should, doesn't hold gears too long, and even sometimes downshifts early to assist with engine braking. It's also quite responsive to throttle inputs and will kick down appropriately when needed. and there's a manual shifting function if you want to take control of the gears yourself. If you're into stats and numbers, there are some displays on the instrument cluster that can tell you your exact throttle input, among other information on what the car is doing at any given time. Though I didn't get the opportunity to do any off-road testing, we've extensive experience with the D-MAX off the beaten track. If you do find yourself off the beaten track, you'll be able to take advantage of the multiple off-road drive modes in gear, which include a rough terrain mode, locking rear differential, and part-time four-wheel drive with 2H, 4H, and 4L modes. What is the ISUZU D-MAX like on the inside? All things considered, there's really no arguing the D-MAX offers a nice interior. It's hard to not take note of the hard plastics draped across the cabin's main touch points, but for a practical car with commercial underpinnings, it's easy to forget you're not in a typical SUV. Unless you look behind you, of course. First and foremost are the seats, which in this spec of D-MAX are leather-accented, heated, and power-adjustable. As such, you'll have no issues getting comfortable when you first hop in, and they make for easy hours behind the wheel. Speaking of, that wheel is also leather-trimmed, and it's where you'll find a lot of the infotainment and driver assist controls. As is expected, they're arranged in an assortment of buttons on the spokes, though they do feel a little cheap and aren't always as responsive as perhaps they could be. They still work as they should, and by extension there's nothing in the cabin that doesn't fall into place logically. Even if there is something you can't immediately figure out, a couple of seconds spent poking and prodding will quickly give an answer you'll easily remember as an owner. If there was a complaint regarding layout, it'd be that the sun visor hits the rearview mirror when unfolded. That means you can't open it all the way unless you physically move the mirror out of alignment, which seems like a bit of an oversight. Up ahead of the wheel is a 7.0-inch digital instrument cluster, which I find a little grating in appearance. I'm not a fan of the graphics and general style here. I prefer the traditional 2 gauges and 4.2-inch multi-information display on lower D-MAX grades. That's not to say you don't get plenty of info with the upgraded system, because you do. You'll find anything you need to know between the mix of a completely digital display and illuminated gauges for engine temperature, fuel level, and RPM. I just wish the screen's presentation was a bit more crisp. The same can't be said for the infotainment system, which is situated on a 9.0-inch touchscreen. This is a solid piece of tech, and I can't forgive the inclusion cheapish instrument cluster if I still get a quality system for music and navigation. Its display is sharp and well laid out with its dual tuner and volume knobs, and wireless Apple CarPlay is a nice treat. It's offered across the range, and apart from a couple of hiccups with the initial phone hookup, it worked flawlessly during our week with the car. I should note those hiccups were likely user error, as I had no issues at any point in the process with the lower spec X-Rider prior to driving the LSU Plus. Below that you'll find a substantial climate control system, which in this spec of D-MAX is arranged in a line of bidirectional switches connected to a small display. It's really not all that different to what you'll find in something like a Mazda, which is unsurprising given the D-MAX and BT50 are mechanical twins and share a lot of interior bits. Again, that's a good thing for the D-MAX, as it means you get a reliable and easy-to-use climate system that doesn't rely on touchscreen or haptic controls. Additionally, there's a traditional gear selector with a sparing selection of buttons either side. A downside is the gloss black trim, which in a car like the D-MAX is a questionable addition given the heavy-duty use it's intended for. We know it scratches and smudges very easily, so if you're going to be moving things in and out of the cabin regularly, I'm sure it'll start to look a bit secondhand in no time. Otherwise, there's a mechanical handbrake, alongside plenty of storage options on the dash and center console. You only get one dedicated cup holder for the center console though, but there are fairly sizable bottle holders in all 4 door cards. It's disappointing ISUZU doesn't offer a wireless charging pad as standard, but it can be added as an option for an extra $470. It'd be slotted in ahead of the gear selector, which is normally just an area for out-of-the-way phone storage. Our tester is also fitted with optional rubber floor mats, an extra $217, which offer improved durability and are easier to clean than their carpet counterparts if you've got muddy boots. As the driver, you're positioned in quite a commanding elevated position that offers great visibility out the front. Additionally, there is good visibility out the rear door windows for head checks, and the large rear window means it's all too easy to keep an eye on everything around you. There are also large extended mirrors with built-in indicators on the LSU Plus, which in combination with blind spot mirroring makes it easy to position the car on the road. The parking cameras and sensors help in tight spaces too. Getting into the back isn't as easy as you might like, as it's limited by doors that don't open to the full 90 degrees and an opening that's on the smaller side. To help, there are side steps running the length of the body to make it a shorter step up for both front and rear passengers. Once you're in, it's not an ideal place to spend time, but will do fine if you've got a family to transport. The rear offers quite a high seating position, which means improved visibility but reduced head space for taller passengers. Toe and legroom is fine, but whether or not you're comfortable will depend heavily on where the front seats are positioned. It's a bench seat arrangement as is expected for a dual-cab ISUZU, though it's quite firm and flat. If you're not prepared, you'll be sliding around thanks to the leather finish, but at least there are large grab handles on the B-pillars to keep you situated. As far as creature comforts go in the rear, ISUZU has fitted 2 air vents and a single USB-C outlet on the back of the center console, while there's also a fold-down center armrest with 2 cup holders. At the rear is the ISUZU tub, which is appointed with tailgate assist across the range. That makes it easier to open and close the tailgate, but you'll need to remember it still needs to be locked manually as it isn't included in the central locking. For comparison, the D-MAX offers a tub that is more or less the same width as what's offered with the Ranger, though its floor is more than 100 millimeters longer but slightly shallower. Covering it all off is a black rolling tonneau cover, which is an extra premium touch on an already very complete package.